we ready to rock?
We're ready to rock.
Okay. My first exposure to a camera was when I was, I think, about 10 years old. And my father had a very nice German camera made by Zeiss Icon, which is a famous German company. And it was a little compact folding camera. You press a button, bellows would pop out and be ready to go. And we were down at Marine World, and we were watching the porpoises perform, the dolphins perform. And I asked my dad, how does that thing work? He took a couple pictures. And he said, well, you set this, and then you look and you click. And I said, can I try? He said, sure. And so he handed me the camera. And I watched, and I took 2 pics. And remembered to advance the film and do everything right, and I handed it back. And he just kind of shrugged his shoulders, and my kids taking a picture. When we got the roll of film developed, and all the pictures came back, the only 2 really good shots were the ones I took, where I had the dolphin absolutely at the top of its jump going through a hoop, and another one jumping up to hit a ball they had suspended. And my dad looked at them, and he looked at me, and he said, "You're a photographer." That was it. That was very big. Yeah, and then I got my first camera, I think 2 years later. My parents, this is really kind of funny, because this was back in the day where you get a box of cereal and there'd be a little thing there saying, send 3 box tops and 50 cents for postage, and we'll send you a free camera. And my mom actually surprised me. She saved the box tops from 3 boxes of cereal and sent it in, and I got this little Instamatic camera. That was my first camera when I was 12 years old.
I remember box tops. How many people had cameras like that at the time?
Oh, actually, a company like Zeiss Icon was a big selling company. In fact, they were probably, I think, even as late as 1967, I think that they were probably the biggest camera company in the world at the time. So they had extremely high quality cameras, and then they had entry level cameras. So they had for everybody. And my dad, that camera he had, that was called an Iconta, and it was somewhere in between. It was a better camera, but it wasn't one of their more expensive ones. So actually, once I used his camera, I started to look around and realized lots of people have it. Lots of people have it. But by 1967, the popular camera was one made by Kodak. So you would see families, walking around for vacation and stuff, and they had the Instamatic cameras. Kodak Instamatic cameras. Everybody had one of those, and my mom had one. So we had a variety at home.
So then what led to actually collecting? Did your father have a collection to begin with?
No, nothing like that. Yeah, now that's a story I've shared before. In 1973, the summer of 73, I was 16 years old. And by that time, by the way, I had a 35 millimeter camera, so I'd come up in the world. And I really was taking a lot of pictures and just having a blast learning all about photography. I even had a setup in the house where I could develop my own pictures. So I was doing all the photography thing. I had a subscription to Modern Photography magazine. And every other month, they had a column in there by one of the editors called The Camera Collector. And he would talk about rummaging through pawn shops and secondhand stores and finding antique cameras, and then he would feature them and talk about the history. So I was sitting there in the living room, like I said, this was August of 1973. I'm looking at the current issue, and there's The Camera Collector, and there was a picture of a particular camera I was looking at. I was kind of laughing. And my dad was in the kitchen. He kind of leans over and looks over in the living room and says, "What are you laughing at?" And I put the magazine in front. I said, "Look at that." And he goes, "You think that's funny?" And I said, "Yeah, people collect those. Can you imagine collecting those?" And it was an old Kodak camera. Again, bellows camera. And he looked at it and looked at it. He said, "You really think that's funny?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He says, "Okay, whatever." So I went back to the living room. I was reading the rest of the magazine. My dad went downstairs, and I heard cabinet doors opening and closing and rummaging around and think, what the heck is he doing down there? And he came back up the stairs and he walked over and he handed me this leather case. Okay. And I said, "What's this?" And he said, "Well, open it up." And I pulled this thing out. And I said, "What's this?" And he said, "Press the button." Unless I pressed the button. It was the exact same camera that was in the magazine. The exact same model down to every single detail. And I said, "What's this?" And he said, "That was your grandfather's camera. He bought that new in 1914. And he said, "Now it's your camera." He said, "Maybe you can be a collector." That was it.
So your dad was very
Yeah.
pivotal
Yeah.
in your collecting.
Yeah, that's what started me. I was only 16 years old.
So when did you actually start thinking, perceiving yourself as a collector?
I really right after that. Here I was looking at these articles. The editor in question was Jason Schneider, who is still with us today, and he's still influential in terms of photo history. Looking at his articles, I went back through prior issues, and he said, "Oh, well, you go to pawn shops. Oh, you go to secondhand stores. Oh, you go to thrift stores." So it was right after my dad gave me that first camera that I thought, I wondered what I could find. And I came from a generation where, as teenagers, we all had jobs, so we all had a little money, you know. And I was out there actually hunting for cameras right away, and I was surprised at the kind of things that I could find. Also, I made a lot of mistakes. I bought cameras I shouldn't have bought. I didn't know. It was all new to me. But that was right there, age of 16. Boom! I was on my way. I was collecting.
And who did you show your collection to?
Well, the next thing you do when you enter into any kind of collectible field is you seek out, the community. You know, who else is doing this? And it was shortly after that okay, now I'm working the gray cells to remember. There was a camera collector show that was featured in, I think it was in Oakland. Maybe it was in Berkeley. We're talking a long time ago. We're talking, let's see, what year did that show come out? I want to say that show was the very next year, in 1974. And I saw an advertisement for it, and I told my mom and dad about it. I said, "Can we drive over to Oakland? I live in San Francisco. Can we drive over to Oakland?" And they were like, "Okay, that might be interesting." And sure enough, I met dozens of people who were collecting old cameras, and they were dealing in them and whatnot. The one thing I found out is that I was the kid. I was the youngest one there. Most of these people were anywhere from 10 to 20 years older at the time. And I didn't realize there was an established community of camera collectors. So I entered it at a pretty young age.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And do you still keep in touch with people from that very first?
Yeah, a couple of them are still around, but unfortunately, I mean, when I'm 68, so you're talking about people 20 and more years older, a lot of them are gone. You know, they've passed on. But some of the younger ones are still around. In fact, next week I'm going to visit a friend of mine in Berkeley. His name is Graham Pilecki, and Graham goes way back. He was there at that show. He was one of the dealers at the show, and he was one of the very first people I met. And he's been a good friend ever since. So I'm going to go visit him next week.
Oh, I love that. So how did you end up transitioning from this is my hobby to, I know, I actually found you because your name comes up a lot in different forums when people they stumble upon a great collection. And then I noticed I kept seeing, you have to speak to David Silver in San Francisco. So how did that happen? How did it become something professional for you?
That's just a factor of time. I mean, consider that I entered into that community, like I said, about 1974, 75, entered into that community, and then we're talking 50 years. 50 years. So it's just a factor of time. I just was always around. And I would think having the advantage of being one of the younger ones, I had a little more freedom at the start to go out there more than some of the other older ones that, well, they were busy raising families, making money, doing whatever they're doing. So I had a good head start into it. But I'll tell you the key. In 1977, I was only 20 years old. I wrote an article for, excuse me, oh God, what was it for? It was a tabloid style monthly publication called American Collector. Just on a whim, I wrote an article on stereo cameras, 3D cameras, and I sent it off to American Collector and thought maybe I could get published. This is 1977. I was only 20 years old. They bought it. They bought it. And I never forget, I got a check for $155.50, which was a lot of money in 1977. Well, that was the start. I have probably written over 70 articles on collecting cameras and history of photography. A lot under my name, but I also wrote under a couple of pseudonyms. And for what reason now, I don't know why, but it just seemed like a cool thing to do when I was younger. And that was part of how I think I popularized myself in the field. Okay. And then also, I was instrumental in starting one of the first online camera collecting groups. And then I am a force on Facebook. I am the sole administrator of 3 different groups dedicated to collecting different kinds of antique cameras. So you just keep going. You just keep creating more venue and keep putting your name out there. So that's how
There's natural progression.
it is. It's just a progression. Yes, yes.
So I want to try to understand this world of enthusiasts. What did peak camera collecting look like for that community?
We reached a peak. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. Here was the problem with our community. There is a relationship between camera collectors and military enthusiasts. And the reason why is that first wave of collectors were part of the great generation that went through World War II. And a lot of the men came home from World War II, and they were photography specialists in the military. They fell in love with photography. It's addicting. It's an addicting hobby. So they came out of the war, and at some point they started to think back. They had nostalgia for the old cameras they used during the war. The old cameras they also came home from Germany or from Japan that were older cameras. They were war booty, right? Wow, what else is out there? So you had this first wave of collectors that basically matured, say, in the 1960s. Okay. Well, unfortunately, you had that first wave. You had a subtle second wave that came out of the Korean War, and then you had a third wave that came out of the Vietnam War. So you can see these stages. Well, the Vietnam War would be the ones that are just slightly older than me. I missed having to go into the military just by 2 years, I think. So you have these 3 peaks in the interest, and it's mostly male. And what's happened is, unfortunately, so many of them died off. And instead of another generation coming up to collect and preserve some of these great old cameras, uh, there is no next generation, and sadly, I'm seeing it go away. But there was the great peak of collecting was probably in the 1980s, 80s into the early 90s. That's where there were the most collectors. Even the older generation was still of an age where they were very, very, very active. And there's been a slow decline ever since.
Which we'll get into.
Yes.
I want to hear, what was your favorite camera that you came across during, even if it's the 80s, 90s, that felt the most exciting to you? Favorite camera or favorite person you met in this moment of collecting?
Well, I at some point or another met a lot of the other really, really good collectors. I was fortunate to have here in California, there was a collector named Mike Kessler, who was remarkable. And he used to talk about how he would get in his, he had a Volvo station wagon, and he would travel for a month across the country, hitting little side stops to hit secondhand stores and antique stores. And he found treasures, some of the most amazing things. He unfortunately is one of those older ones. He's passed away. His entire collection has gone back east to another collector. It was a very rare thing to see an entire collection move. Yeah, usually that just doesn't happen. But another collector who, fortunately, has a lot of money, bought his collection outright from Mike's widow, so that was preserved. But Mike Kessler was an amazing man, and I miss him terribly. He was a good friend. But in terms of that, peak item that I collected, This is kind of out of context. I don't know how the viewers will respond to this. But there was a camera called the Stern American Detective Camera. Okay.
That was the official name.
That was the official name, the Stern American Detective Camera. People know the word Kodak, and they may not know that Kodak comes from the name of the first successful camera that George Eastman sold as part of the Eastman Film Company. And when he realized how popular the Kodak camera was, he named the whole company Kodak. Okay, but that very first Kodak camera was important because of it provided a process that was accessible to anybody. Any man, woman, or child could use a Kodak camera. It's a very simple box camera. And he often gets credited, George Eastman gets credited with inventing, providing, promoting the first successful, what we call a roll film camera. And that's not actually true. There was a camera that came before, 2 years before. You're talking 1888 versus 1886. And it's an extremely rare camera called the Stern American Detective Camera. It was actually the first one that provided a real simple box camera that used roll film. Anybody could use it. And I sought one for years. And one finally came to me. And it's strange how it happened because somebody contacted me from England and said that they had this camera. And I said, well, I want it. And they said, well, here's the interesting story. We're going to be visiting San Francisco in 2 months. We'll bring it to you. And I met them downtown in San Francisco. I met them in the lobby of one of the hotels. And I remember walking in the door, and I had a pocket full of money, walking in the door and seeing them in the lobby, and there was the camera on the table, and my heart skipped a beat because I've been searching for one for years. So that was an incredible find because it's such a rare item and it represents such an important step in history. The Kodak camera gets all the glory, but I know where the history really goes. That was the camera.
I think about this a lot with technology. There's often a few names that we remember in history. The people who actually broke the market or popularized an item, we tend to forget over time. So actually, that leads me into what we discussed earlier. Where's the overlap for you between important versus expensive? So important meaning to you as a collector, something you value because of the history or the rareness. And then, for me, I don't really know that much about cameras. So if I'm looking at something, I look at the price tag and I think, oh, then that must indicate something. What does it not overlap, actually?
You're dealing with a couple of factors here. One is misunderstanding of value by people who are dealing the items. They don't know what the item is really worth, so they guess. So you get a lot of people who go into a secondhand shop or you look on eBay. eBay is the greatest source of misinformation out there because you can go online and just plug in antique camera and you'll see people asking ridiculous prices because they don't realize the camera is selling is basically confidence dust. So the factors that are really important to appraising and evaluating the camera. This isn't a mystery. It's number one is condition. Okay, I don't care if it's rare or it's common. I always tell budding collectors, if you paid 50 cents for a camera at a flea market that's in terrible condition, you didn't get your money's worth. Okay, I don't care if it's a common Instamatic or if it's something rare. Always insist on the best possible condition. You'd be shocked how many cameras are out there that look like new. So don't settle for poor condition. The second thing is rarity. Is the item actually rare or not? And I'll give you a classic example. People who are familiar with the Leica line of 35 millimeter cameras. These are high quality, professional 35 millimeter cameras. They go all the way back to 1925 or so. And people think that any Leica is rare. Oh, they've made literally millions of Leica cameras, and some of the models are very, very common. Are there rare ones? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The very first Leica camera was basically a prototype. They only made 30 of them. They have sold literally for millions of dollars. There's a couple that keep getting resold, and the prices keep going up. But there are very, very common models that were made prior to World War II and immediately after World War II that are actually very common, very inexpensive, but people think Leica, therefore rare and valuable. And so you go on eBay, you'll see somebody with a very common Leica camera from 1950, and they want $2,000. And I want to tell them it's only worth $200. They don't know. So what are you dealing with? Mystique. Mystique. Okay. Leica was very good at their own approach. Okay. And then the third thing we've done condition, we've done actual rarity. The third thing is historical significance. That unfortunately can be diluted by the other two things. So you might have cameras that are extremely common, but they're historically significant. And then you'll have cameras that have no historical significance, but they're very rare. So you have this balancing act. How do you really evaluate those? It's not so easy. It's not so easy. But I always stick to those three things: condition, the actual rarity, and historical significance. When those three things come together, boom, this is good.
This is probably what makes you so interesting, or what drew me to you. The third part, the history.
Yeah.
You have a strong appreciation for it. You've written a lot about it. And for you, is there any particular camera or part of camera technology that you just really want to make sure is preserved?
Yeah. As an anthropologist, I'm always, my particular interest has always been in the point where technology takes hold in the public, the common man. Photography was introduced to the world in 1839, and it was not an easily accessible process. It was difficult. It went through a lot of changes up through 1880 or so, and a lot of the things involved in the process were poisonous. You could literally poison yourself if you didn't know what you were doing. And then 1880, there were changes that took place that made photography accessible to everybody. So I feel that the period from roughly 1880 up to just about World War II, I'm sorry, back up, World War I, World War I, that period there, 30 to almost 40 years, I think that's a period that really, really needs to be preserved because it represents that point where any man, woman, or child could learn the process. Cameras became easier to use, and there was this rapid change in the technology of the camera itself. So we came up with miniaturization. Cameras became much smaller because the film became much better. We had things like twin lens reflexes and single lens reflexes, and yet we still had box cameras and simple bellows cameras. All of that was happening in that 30 to 40-year period. Everything beyond that's been fine-tuning. It's just been making them subtly better, but it hasn't been any radical change from the actual concept and application of cameras since about World War I. Love that period.
I love that period too.
Good.
Obsessed with the sort of turn of the century right there. So
Yes. As photography became more accessible to the common man, once again, my favorite period, that 40-year period, it allowed all of us to become documenters of history. Prior to that, it was left to actual professional photographers, actual historians, actual journalists. And by the turn of the century, by 1900, we had little brownie box cameras. Everybody could take pictures of important events. And one of the great ones here in Ireland, San Francisco, the 1906 earthquake was at that point the best documented historical event of all time because people were walking around with brownie cameras taking pictures of what happened. So that was a major change. I think what's happened since then is we've reached this point now with digital photography and with smartphones where instead of looking out at the world, for some reason, we've turned the camera around, we're looking in. And I find that rather sad that people have become more interested in just themselves and have kind of lost that touch with the rest of the world. But that's changing because I'm starting to see more young people come to me and talk about photography and say they want to use a real camera. because they don't want to look inward. They want to look outward. The question is whether or not they can afford it, whether or not they have the patience to learn it. You pick up a smartphone, and you know that click, 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 and they take 1,000 pictures and forget them. You pick up a film camera, and you get, let's say, 16 to 30 shots in a roll of film, depending on the camera. You have to stop and think. Okay? You have to compose the picture. You have to involve yourself with what you're looking at. It's a meditative process. You take one picture and then you go on to the next one, on the next one. You have them developed. You have them turned into prints. They're a physical thing. They're tangible. See, it's a completely different experience. And I'm glad to see that there are young people returning to that. But it's not a great movement yet.
So we've talked about how vintage camera collecting, as you say, has sort of tapered off compared to what it was before.
Yeah.
What were some of those early signs that at the time you didn't quite see, but now looking back, you go, oh, that was the beginning of when things were really starting to shift?
You know what? I think that some of the older collectors knew that the field was in trouble some years back. In the 1990s, I had a relationship with a magazine called what was it? It's photo something or other, photo collector, photo something. I can't remember because it's gone. It only existed for about 2 years. But I did a regular column for them. I did, I think, 13 columns for them on aspects of collectible cameras. And one of the old collectors saw my articles and they said, thank God somebody is promoting the field. Because this was at a show. It was at the old Photo Fair show down in San Jose. This thing was huge. In the 1990s, we were still getting camera shows that had 250 tables full of dealers selling collectible or usable old photo equipment. And this one old collector, he said, thank God you're doing it. He says, you see all this? He said, this is all going to be gone in 10 to 15 years because they don't promote the field. They just want to live in their little world and do their thing. And I was trying to promote it. He used to say, it might be too little, too late, but keep doing it, keep doing it. And I didn't believe him at the time. I thought, oh, no, there'll always be cameras. Well, from the 1990s, that's about the point where you saw the first generation of collectors starting to leave us. And it slowly started to go down. And what's happened in the last 2 years is we've had some major attrition in the field. And a lot of collectors have left us or they've become too ill to be involved anymore. So that core of collecting, where we have the really valuable, really historically interesting things, they're expensive, right? Nobody's buying them. And what's happening is the younger collectors who are coming along are buying cameras doing what we call lomography, which is taking pictures with cameras with plastic lenses, and you get interesting results from them. And using common Kodak cameras for which you can still get some of the film for, and it's relatively inexpensive stuff. But meanwhile, I fear that a lot of the really historically important stuff, the old stuff, the things from back in the 1880s, we don't know what's happening to them as these collectors die off. They may be going away. They may be getting thrown away. So I'm really concerned with preservation. I'm really concerned that people aren't seeking out someone like me who, even at 68, I'm young enough to do something with the material and preserve it. I don't want to see it lost.
So the current state of camera collecting in terms of active collectors, who are these sorts of people now?
There are the ones that are my age, the ones that are 10 years younger. That was the last significant wave of collectors. The young ones coming up are, a lot of them are techies. And they deal all the time with technological stuff, and they want to experience something that's more visceral, something that's more real. So they are assembling small collections like I say, snapshot cameras, plastic cameras, um, kind of insignificant stuff. But at least they're preserving that. At least they're using that. They're of an age I kind of look and think, well, as they get more money and they get more curiosity, this is important. All these fields are driven by curiosity. If that works for them, maybe they're going to start asking the question, what came before? Okay. Where are the early cameras? How far back? See, a lot of them don't even know the history of photography. They're not aware that it goes all the way back to 1839. So there's my hope for the future. And even though I'm of an age and I should be retiring at this point, I'm kind of hanging in there trying to do more, trying to figure out how I can still continue to promote the field. I'm an old Luddite. I don't know enough about technology today, and I have to learn how to go online more, how to maybe do podcasts like you, how to get the message out there and see if I can generate curiosity.
Well, you certainly got me curious.
Okay.
I had to follow the little breadcrumbs.
Have fun. Have fun.
So, right now, who do you think is doing preservation particularly well at an institutional level? So,
Well, see, unfortunately there aren't enough institutions that have devoted themselves to the preservation of camera technology. There are museums all across the country, all across the world that thank God are preserving photography. Okay. There's never been a problem with that. You have the aesthetic part of photography. You have the artistic part of photography. You have the journalistic part of photography, the actual result of photography. That's no problem. But the technology, the cameras, here in California, if you go down to Riverside, UC Riverside has a beautiful collection of antique cameras, and they circulate things in and out on exhibit down there, along with their actual photography holdings, their actual great photographs. That's one here in California. What I find sad is here in the San Francisco Bay Area, I mean, which was, at one point, it was the birthplace of Ansel Adams, one of the greatest photographers in history. There is no such institute here. And I think that's kind of sad. But you have to go back east. You go to the Eastman House in Rochester, the home of Kodak. They probably have the largest and most comprehensive collection of photographic technology in the world. One of the things I need to do one of these points is make a pilgrimage there. I have an invitation to go down into the basement and see the collection at some point or another. And I'm adverse to travel, but I'm going to get back there eventually, take a look. I'll probably spend days down there. They'll probably have to send a search party to get me out again.
I think before you go, I'm going to make sure we set up some sort of record it.
Yeah. I mean, this is I've seen pictures of the collections, and I'm shocked that nobody's done really a very thorough walkthrough video of the place, because it's what they have is amazing. So my fear of something like that, though, is so much stuff is in one place, and it should be dispersed across multiple places. And yet there are specialty museums in Ann Arbor, Michigan. There's a museum for Argus cameras, and Argus was a great American name. And I'm glad to see that they preserve that. But what it really comes down to is people like me who are, we're holding the flame, trying to keep it alive, that try to acquire what we can to preserve. There are a few other collectors across the country that are trying to do the same thing. So in lieu of institutions, there are the individuals that are trying to keep the stuff together, and we hope that we could pass it on to another generation down the line. So that's about it, really.
I think a lot of people can relate to what you're going through, whether it's their professional field or just personal interests, because things are moving so quickly with technology. And maybe that's not specific to our time, because we talked earlier about the turn of the century.
And massive changes very quickly, yes.
But how do you process that, just as an individual? This was the passion that you've had since you were 10 years old. It means a lot to you. You invest time and energy into it. and watching other people not quite keep up in the same way that you have? How does it feel?
Uh, as I said, I think the problem was always a lack of sufficient promotion, a lack of education. I became an expert in this field through mistakes. I researched. There were very few books originally on camera technology, on the evolution of photographic technology. Plenty of books on photography, but very few books. Now, there are more out there now, but there are no new books on camera technology. Um, I think that there was never enough education. There was never enough, like I said, how do you spark curiosity? And um, boy, I'm not sure if we've run out of time to promote it again, re-promote it to re-educate. But my education came from searching out what little material there was. I was doing crazy things like looking in old telephone directories in cities across the country, looking for where factories were located. Think crazy things like that. Trying to learn, ascertain, when were certain factories actually founded? When did these companies actually start? Found lots of mistakes, lots of, uh, of misunderstandings about how this industry evolved. There are no degrees in the history of photography. You can't go somewhere and get a degree in that. So when people say, "Are you accredited in this field?" I said, "There is no accreditation in this field. There was only one way to do it, and that's to go out there and get your hands dirty and dig into the history of learning." And I got to a point where there are a lot of specialists out there who know more about very specific fields than I do. But I don't think there's anybody alive today who knows the comprehensive history of the technology of photography as I do. I think I've got it pretty well nailed. I can stand toe to toe with the specialists and we understand each other. I have the whole thing. It's the grand narrative, from start to where we are today. And I'm proud of that. But it was a lot of work. It was a lot, like I said, a lot of mistakes. I had to correct myself over and over again. There was an important writer in our field named Peter Palmquist. And years ago, he's passed away, unfortunately, but years ago, I talked to him about how I was worried about sending articles in to be published. And I said, what if I made a mistake? And Peter said to me, you know what? It's point A and there's point C, and I don't know where B is. He said, I make it up. I said, really? He says, yes. And the reason why I do that is it's better to get it out there and published so that it will be peer reviewed and it'll get corrected. So he said to me, make all the mistakes you want. Do it with gusto. Go out there, write whatever you want to write. And if it's wrong, we'll learn. We'll learn down the line. So you have to be courageous too. You have to be willing, I think, a little bit sometimes to fall in your face. But that's how we progress. I think that's true in any technology and any historical research. We make mistakes.
I love the term peer review
Okay.
because nowadays, I'm just connecting this now online.
Mhm.
People have asked me, how do you get comfortable with being willing to put something out there, and what if you're wrong, or what if people come back to you criticizing? I would love that. I would actually love to learn more. Obviously, there's a degree of negativity in the comments, but I think for the most part, people are quite well intentioned, and it is nice to have figure out. Oh, there was that incomplete piece of my incomplete like little puzzle piece in my understanding, and now they can fill it. So
Yeah.
that's something that the internet is very good at peer review. They will
Oh,
let
yes.
us know.
Good, bad, and ugly.
It's exactly.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, I know you say you're in the process of retiring. I guess what has sort of deciding to start moving on from your collecting
Well,
changed for you?
well, I'm of an age. I hate that term. But I'm there. I'm 68. I mean, I don't want to be peddling cameras the rest of my life. So now it's I'm oh my God, I've got Social Security. My goodness, free money every month. It's not. I paid into it. We all paid into it. I got my Medicare. I've got everything lined up, and I'm saying it's not so much that I'm retired. I like the term retiring in the sense that I will still pedal on occasion. People contact me, they ask me to broker things for them. So I have somebody down in Southern California who's right now sending me up a big box full of Nikon lenses from the 1980s. And I told them, so well, there's money that people want to use these. That's not stuff necessarily you need to collect, but there's some money there. So I will peddle for people. I will broker for people. I'll probably do that as long as I'm capable. But it's no longer my business. Now my vocation, I'm not sure it's the right term, is that I'm returning back to being more of a collector and more of a preservationist. And more importantly, it's my time while I still got my marbles, while I can still write down all of this history, get it online. I have a lot of people telling me that you need to go online. You need to create a space where people have a soft landing for a first place to do their own research. Again, create something like that and get enough people hitting it, that generates curiosity. And see where it goes.
It feels like the collection's here.
It's in there.
How many cameras did you have at the peak of your collecting? How many do you
before I turned it into a business? I will tell you, I worked 16 years in San Francisco civil service. I was a playground director. I worked with at-risk kids, teenagers, in inner city playgrounds. And I did that for about 16 years, and I got frustrated because I couldn't get promoted. And my wife said to me, "You have all this expertise in the history of photography, and there are people out there that deal with it. Why can't you do that?" So in 1998, I resigned from the rec department, and I said, "Okay, my collection will now be my starter stock to become a dealer." 2,000 cameras. I had over 2,000 cameras, and that got me started. So I went through this process where I still want to collect because I love these things so much. But I had to admit that every single item I owned, it had a little price tag hanging off of it, right? And if there were things that I had no problem putting up for sale, eBay, of course, was hugely important in this decision I made. eBay started in, what was it, August of '95. So by '98, it really established itself, and that was a wonderful conduit to reach out to millions of people. So that was great for marketing. Thank you, eBay. But I had a lot of stuff I didn't mind selling. Then I had the stuff that I really, really loved. And they said, "Well, I'm going to put a price tag. It's going to be a high price tag." Well, at that time in the '90s, there were still people who would pay. So I lost a lot of my collection that way. So over time, what I've done is as I've reached this point, and so much is gone. So much has come into my possession and is left. I have a little core collection now of about 30 cameras, and they're all American cameras, and they're all from that period I spoke about, 1880, maybe 1910. They're all in that zone. And that's the core of my new collection, so to speak. Okay, those things don't have price tags on. I don't need to sell them. And we'll take it from there and see what else I can acquire. But it's about the preservation, and I'm really worried that things will be lost. So whatever becomes available, I'm going to get, and I want to preserve, and I want to take more pictures, do more study, somehow present that to everybody. Okay, I don't want that. What I know, my knowledge, what I've done, I don't want that to die when I'm gone. I need to make sure that I leave that for generations to come.
That's why I reached out to you.
Thank you.
So that we could do this on video, and hopefully this can be the start of more of these. Like, what was your reaction when I reached out to you?
I was delighted.
Because I left you an email and a voicemail, and I thought it was too aggressive, but eventually I heard back.
Not at all. No, I was delighted. I did a video for Gizmodo. it's been some time. I think that was back in,
It's pre-pandemic, I think.
yeah, it was 2018, I think. And there were two problems. One, the young lady was Myra. I can't remember her last name, but she and her assistant came, and they had quite the setup. They came to my house, and we moved things around. We did whatever. It was at that time, just for fun, I had accumulated a collection of about 400 plastic cameras. I was having fun. Along with the business, I was having fun. And the reason why is if you go back to the 40s and 50s, especially in America, they were making a lot of plastic cameras in all kinds of fancy colors. So I would do things like, well, I want to get this set, and I want all 5 colors. And because I told you what important condition, a lot of them were in their original boxes. They were like new. So I had, I think, about 200 of them on display in my den, and I had another 200 that were stored away. And she saw them somewhere. She said, "I want to come and do a video on your collection." And I explained to her. I said, "These are all going to get sold." I did what I wanted to do. I had phones, and they're all going to get sold. But she wanted to do this, and I did the video. And unfortunately, the day they came, I was recovering from the flu, and I was miserable. And I said, I didn't want to do this. But I perked up and I managed to do it. So that's okay. But I look at the video and I think, I look sick. That's probably overcritical. But the other part was Myra asked some incredibly astute questions, kind of like what we're doing here about what the history meant and why we're doing it. And unfortunately, whoever was the producer behind it, actually, she went back to the studio. Here's all the footage. He cut all the good stuff out. He turned it in kind of a sensational thing. Look at these plastic cameras, isn't this cool? And took out all the interesting conversation about the actual history of photography. And I was really disappointed in that. It's a beautiful little video. Ira did a wonderful job with it, but I just thought it could have been so much more.
It is a gorgeous video. I was actually rewatching it for probably the 4th or 5th time this morning before coming to see you. And by the way, you look totally fine. I know what you mean. When I feel off, then I look at myself in the camera.
Myra, your assistant, for making me look good. Okay.
But I remember thinking, gosh, I just wish this were longer.
Mm-hmm.
I forget how many minutes long it is, but it leaves you sort of wanting for more. But I think that's the challenge of video editing back.
She said it was going to be 9 to 12 minutes.
I think that's about the line.
And I think it cut off at 9. And it's basically worth 3 minutes at least of really good stuff. And I think she was disappointed as well. She said, we really wanted to add more, but the producer didn't.
So here's an idea for Gizmodo. If you're watching this, we loved the video, and if you still have the raw footage,
yeah, it's the cutting room floor, I'm afraid.
It might be kind of a fun thing on YouTube to release. There's a kind of interesting phenomenon where you see in the market kind of preserves certain things. So right now, I've been noticing 2 things happening. Number one is younger people being very interested in these digital cameras that were popular when I was in high school and when I was in college. They seemed so state of the art to me back then, but now I look and it's very fuzzy. So interest in that. And then the second thing I'm seeing, especially with parents, is having things like Instax cameras around, things that have no screen at all.
Oh yeah, just a viewfinder.
Yeah. What do you make of these 2 trends that are going on?
Well, I discussed earlier, I think, about how it's sad that with the technology of the smartphone, it's the click, 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 and then they never even go back and look at them. They have, literally thousands of pictures that were just forgotten, versus that contemplative process of actually framing a picture, really being invested in the picture, and having something that you're really preserving. With the older digital cameras, what I think is interesting is that you have these cameras that, they're 1 megapixel, which is nothing in terms of image quality. But it's very similar to the young people who are doing lavalier, taking pictures with plastic cameras that have plastic lenses, and they're film cameras. And they like the fact that the plastic lenses render not quite sharp pictures. There's something kind of compelling about them, kind of interesting about them. And I think some of those early digital cameras are the same thing. You can't take a 1 megapixel picture and enlarge it very, very big without it starting to get kind of fuzzy. And again, it is a matter of curiosity and older technology. What our cell phones do today is just tremendous. People ask me, well, what camera do you use, Dave? And I say, iPhone. I do most of my photography with my iPhone because it's such high quality. But things like that Instax camera, where you're getting something physical out of the camera. Here's an actual photograph that comes out of the camera. Just a viewfinder. You have to compose in a viewfinder. You don't get the benefit of a screen. So again, it's a matter of investing yourself in the photographic process, enjoying the contemplative time to actually experience and remember the experience. See, the tactile process of it. There is something incredibly attractive, and it's why photography itself, in its more rudimentary form, was always incredibly addictive. There was so much involved. It was posing the picture, taking the picture. If you were really hardcore, you'd go into your own darkroom. You'd process the picture. There's all this stuff going on. We've lost a lot of that. But with things like Instax cameras, we're getting close. And things like those early digital cameras, they're harkening back. And that's part of that process of reviving curiosity. And I hope it goes further. I hope it goes beyond that.
I think that what you're saying, the touch of it is really interesting.
Tangible.
Not just
real.
Yes, yeah. And not just with cameras, but everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing now. I mean, I love my phone. I love technology. I love trying new things when they come out. But I also can relate to the moments when people talk about wanting to throw their phone into the lake, because it is. You get, first of all, you're addicted to it initially, and then you can't really separate your feet from the phone.
It's who controls who.
And so now there's
the phone controls us.
Exactly. Yeah. And so there's a question now: are people going to try to remove the physical technology and just try to make it all about our voices, or are they going to try to make it feel more delightful? But based on all your years of camera collecting and just observing in your own self, what is satisfying to hold or not? What might be some interesting takeaways for people who are working on technology now, trying to make the presence of it in terms of the hardware more interesting? What might you recommend that they focus on?
Well, what I think is lacking right now is early on with digital technology. Everybody got the camera, like 1 megapixel, big deal. 2 megapixels, wow, we're really going. But people had a way to take the pictures and put them into a printing device. We got prints. Okay, came out of some kind of little machine. They may not have been great quality, but here's a print. Here's something I could put in a frame. I could put it on my counter. I could put it on my fireplace mantle. You had something tangible. What's happened now is I know very few people who have any kind of printer, any kind of way to actually take the pictures out of the darn cell phone. Okay, where did they put them? Well, if they put them anywhere, they're sending them off in emails. They're sending them off on online and whatnot, and they get lost in the shuffle. Okay, but where's the permanence? I think what needs to be re-promoted is some way to easily take pictures out of your smartphone and have them printed out somewhere. Where are the printers?
Have you seen the portable printers that they make now?
They have them. I've seen them. Yeah, I see them. And I want to see more of that. I want to see that permanence. That's what I'm looking for. See, people tell me all the time about the horror stories of saying, "Well, I went and got the new iPhone, and they did the thing where they changed, took the thing, and I got home and found out all my pictures were gone." And I said, "Well, aren't they in the cloud? And things like that." People lose their passwords to get into the cloud, and they lose all their stuff. That happens all the time. See, so where are the pictures that you want to preserve? Where are the pictures that you want to render permanent? There should be more of this kind of thing. Little printers. You should be able to be out somewhere, just in the middle of Yosemite Valley, for God's sake. You go, wow, look at those clouds. You take a picture, and there should be a way that you could press boom, and back at home, the print comes out. So when you come home from the trip, there's the permanent print. See, I want to see more of that. See, right now it's far too ephemeral. It's too easily lost. So that would be the change I really want to see.
Making content more tangible. I feel that way with books.
Yeah.
I find it really hard to do e-readers.
Yeah.
I really like the physicality of turning the pages and hand them photographs. So, one thing I found really interesting while rewatching your video that you recorded previously was when I look on YouTube, there are actually so many vintage camera enthusiasts, and many of them are young. I saw a video from someone in Paris called "What It's Like to Inherit 2,000 Cameras."
Okay.
So I actually think
it's partially a nightmare.
yeah, that's something like that.
Okay.
So, what would you recommend for people who find themselves in that position? Because I'm sure the first thing they'll do is go to YouTube, but
Well, this
what
is
should they do?
this is part of the this is part. Well, see, that's sometimes a mistake. People will just go quickly on, like you say, onto YouTube, and they'll do that. I inherited all these cameras. I don't know what to do. And what happens is the sharks arrive in the water. There are people that will claim they're collectors, but they're actually dealers, and it's pretty easy to figure out. But people don't research enough, and so they get trapped. You'll get people who say, "Well, I'll take that junk off of your hands." It's like that, so you've got to be careful. But the way you approach it, well, first of all, do you want to be a collector? See, that's the question. Most people, no. I just want to get rid of these things, but are they worth money? Okay, that's a perfectly fair question. Why not? Anything you inherit is it worth something? Can I monetize it? That's fine. The problem is usually that people will make a mad dash onto eBay. So they have a camera and they'll go on eBay and they'll say, oh, these are selling for this much money. But they don't realize the difference between what people ask and what people get. And the first thing I say, if you're interested in selling things on your own, eBay is a wonderful source, but make sure you're researching sold prices, not asking prices. I can ask anything I want at a camera. It'll never sell. I have to know what the market will bear. So a source of sold prices. That's if you want to do it on your own. Don't recommend that. There's a learning curve involved. I've been doing this for 50 years. The knowledge base I have is ridiculous, and it has changed over time to reflect the market. People will say things like, well, my father said this camera's worth this much money. When? 20 years ago. It's not worth that anymore. So if you want to sell cameras, if you want to sell a collection, if you want to do it on your own, you're up against a lot of bumps in the road. And you have to be careful. One of the things I tell people about collections, it's almost impossible to sell an entire collection because the people who will buy it, they don't want to buy all that stuff. They want to call what we call cherry pick. They want one particular camera. They want half a dozen particular cameras for various reasons. They don't want the whole collection. So what they'll do is they'll offer you pennies on the dollar. Well, you're not going to make any money that way. The sad part is there are a lot of people who say, well, one and done. One and done. They don't realize what kind of money they're missing out on. So there are two other ways to go. You can contact a broker like me and start a discussion, and I can do an appraisal, give you some idea what the collection is worth, and explain. Well, I have to make a commission, right? Because it's my time. Time is money, and explain how difficult it might be to sell the items, but no, it's not going to sell all at once. 2,000 cameras that poor fellow ended up with. That'll take 2 years to sell. See?
Can I tell you something fun about him?
Yeah.
So he ended up turning it into an exhibit of some kind.
Fantastic.
And you can actually, I know you just said we don't want to go travel too much, but if you ever find yourself in Paris, I think that would be such a fun stop.
Yes.
But what he's done with it is phenomenal. It's all
You need to send me at some point the connection, the link to this, whatever, was it a YouTube thing?
YouTube, yes.
Yes, I haven't seen it. I'm very curious to see because Lord knows I probably knew who his father was.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, I probably do.
So was it a very international kind of?
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, totally. Even into China. Over the years, I've developed friendships with a lot of upper middle class Chinese businessmen who are very interested in photography. So, oh yeah, it's a world. It was a world phenomenon.
What enabled that? I'm guessing you weren't just picking up the phone in the yellow pages. Was this with the internet?
Yeah.
How did you connect with
Yeah.
people?
Yeah. Part of it, as I said earlier, I created a public persona, somebody who wrote on the field, was heavily involved in the field. As you said, my name pops up in a lot of places. So at some point or another, they got hold of me. Truthfully, a lot of the connections were through eBay. So in particular, Chinese collectors have a particular love for optical technology. They love lenses. And some of the great lenses made by some of these companies like Zeiss and Leica itself and some of these other companies, they want these great lenses. And the reason why is the Chinese collectors in particular love to take classic lenses, 100-year-old lenses, and they somehow adopt them onto digital cameras. They use them, which I think is amazing, you know. So I would put up items, interesting optical items on eBay, and the next thing I know, it's going to China, and that starts the relationship. So,
This relates to my next question, which was going to be about, I mean, is your interest limited to film, or does it also extend into digital? Because when I told someone I was chatting with you, they said, "Oh, can you please ask him about one of my digital cameras?" And I thought, I wonder if that's part of your range.
this is something that I am now. Like I said, learning never ends. Okay, it's lifelong learning. I do not know enough yet about digital technology. I'm learning now. And where I'm learning from, oddly enough, is I'm looking at it from a historical perspective. So, young people that are interested in the early digital cameras, that's where I'm starting from. I want to. I'm doing the research. I'm learning. Well, who came out first with this and that, and the next thing? What companies were at the forefront early on? And I'm building that knowledge base. So I'm learning. Am I expert in digital? Oh God, no. Unfortunately, for too many years, I was a bit of a luddite, kind of avoided anything electronic. But I'm learning. Yeah, I'm learning. Didn't finish up on the what to do with this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. A broker like me would provide full service, but some people just want to know what the stuff is worth, and I can understand that. And they'll say, let's say the collection is in New York and I'm in San Francisco. There's the problem getting the collection here if I was going to broker it for them. So sometimes the question is there anybody local who can handle it? And there are fewer and fewer, but I try to source brokerage services to either collectors or dealers in their area when I can. So you've got the three ways. You can either try to do it on your own, which is dangerous. You can embrace the services of a broker like me. Or if someone contacted me and they said they want to keep it local, I'll see who I can get to help you out. So it's part of that network. So that finishes that question.
Well, my last question is very much related to that.
Oh, okay.
Which is, if somebody comes looking for David Silver, aside from writing an email, I am curious. You know, you've now started exploring ChatGPT, and I'm looking
All new to me.
all the new things.
Yeah.
I mean, new to everybody now.
Yeah.
Where are you? I mean, I'm not asking you to just say definitively this is where I would be, but what are some areas that you're curious about? You mentioned podcasting, maybe not too.
Yes.
But what are the areas that really catch your eye in terms of maybe what will be there?
I have a website that has sat and done nothing for years and years. So I have a portal. I've had people who said, well, David, you must have deep resources in terms of images of rare cameras and all that history, the articles you've written. And I, even though they've been published elsewhere, I own the rights to the articles. I stupidly have lost the manuscripts, a lot of articles I've written over the years.
How?
And
Computer turnover.
yeah, well, that was part of it. Also, a lot of them were written on a typewriter. Yeah, yeah, we're going way back. Remember my first one, 1977.
Right.
And I was all 20 years old. That was typewritten. But yes, some have been lost in computer turnover. And then I've gone and tried to look up the magazines. Some of these magazines don't exist anymore. And you go to, I can't think what is it called, the Wayback Machine or something like that, where you can look up. But it's just they don't give you what you're looking for, really. A lot of stuff is lost. So I have a lot of articles that are gone. But what I do have, I retain the rights in whatever material I do have. Get that online. I have thousands of pictures of all sorts of cameras. Create a searchable database where people could look for not only the cameras, but then segue into, well, here's the manufacturer information. Take it from there. Have links that, well, if you have a camera like this, check out this one. Try to do all that kind of thing. And there's no reason why I can't do it. It's just basic HTML. Just fire the stuff off and get it up online. It's work I never could do for so many years because, I had a job. I was working. I was a dealer. So there was never that kind of time. Now that I am retiring, I have more time, so I want to pursue that. But also, I've had a lot of people say, "Gee, Dave, you should do this. You should get some kind of YouTube channel going and do a thing where every week or maybe twice a week, just do a little 3-minute video and say, hey, I want to tell you about this one really interesting antique camera. And so just keep it going. And they said, within a year, suddenly you've got, 50 of them online. And, I always talk about the curiosity thing. They say, I can't think of anything, that would generate more curiosity than people actually seeing you handle these things and show them to the public. So that's something I want to pursue. You have wonderful technology that you're using to do this. I need to learn. Okay.
I was going to ask, what has stopped you from just opening your computer and starting your first YouTube video?
Time. Just time. Just too busy doing other things. And I'm now in a process where I'm segueing out of being a dealer, which means I've got uh, uh, boxes of things that I'm probably never going to sell. Um, uh, Things that are scattered around, based around. Well, I'm a dealer. I buy, sell, and commission. Do whatever I'm doing this. I'm changing my office complex. I want to create a space where I can set up a camera that, well, my iPhone. I want to set it up in a permanent space where it's well lit, where I have a nice comfy chair like you have, and I can actually do this and do presentations. I don't have that right now. What I have instead is a teeny little white stage where I put cameras on and take pictures of it to sell. So I need to expand that, change all that. And it's just a lot of moving things around and doing that. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm in that process. I'm in the beginning of it. So I'm looking forward to the next couple of months. I think well into 2026, I will be up and running.
That's exciting.
It is. It
And
is.
anything I can do to help, I'm here for you.
That's great. Thank you so much.
It took me a while to figure out even just setting up. I mean, it's very straightforward, but then once you get in there are all these kinds of settings and things.
Yeah, this is all new to me.
Yes, mental barrier. I don't know if you can relate to this, but I felt like, is it self-absorbed to even be going on YouTube? But
I think that way too. I sometimes think, okay, am I promoting preservation and curiosity, or am I, look at me, I'm Dave Silver, isn't this great? And I worry about that. But most of my friends that seem to they see podcasts and things all the time. They say, no. People will focus on what you're presenting. Don't worry about that. That's okay.
Speaking to you gave me some clarity on what exactly I think the act of creating this sort of content and releasing it to the world is. You spent the early part of your life really collecting these physical objects, and then releasing them back into the wild. And there's something beautiful about it, selling it when it is still valuable to others. Aside from it's nice to put that money back into your pocket, it means that there's somebody out there who values it by that much and make their day to have it. And I find information has a similar. We spend our lives collecting information, absorbing, being curious, reading books as you have, and collecting all this knowledge. And I find it such a shame to think that we might sort of go into the night without having shared that with anybody.
Yes.
And that's, to me,
I can't think somebody was doing talks about aging, and And they said, so don't let the music die inside of you. Don't let the music die inside of you. You need to get it out. And that's so true. And I think a lot of people don't realize that whatever they've done in their lives, there are experiences and there are views of history, views of their lives that we should share somehow. I'll tell you the saddest aspect of my collecting over the years. This would always gut me when I would see it. But along with collecting cameras, the artifacts, I also would deal in the photographs themselves. And people would call me and say, "Oh, I found a big pile of photographs," or I'd find them at a garage sale or whatever. And I'd go and I'd look, and here are all these photographs of people from the 20s, the 1910s, 18 and 90, all these old photographs. Not one had an identification. They were all lost souls, and no one will ever know who they were. And it would just gut me to think, they're lost in time. People have lost their history. That's so sad. So sad. Which is why we come back to the idea that the people dealing with the cell phone technology and how it expands think less of the immediacy and more about the permanence. Figure out a way to get people and promote that they download these things. And for God's sakes, you've got a piece of paper that shows a picture from your vacation. On the back, write something on it so we know what it was. Preserve your history. It all matters.
I was in an antique store the other day, and I was trying to find local photos of people that photos that have been collected here.
Sure.
And they had so many, I thought I need some kind of criteria to filter. But my new filter became, did anybody write on it? Any kind of caption, the year, the names, and then that narrowed things down.
Yeah.
And so I purchased everything that they had. And when I did a photo-related event in this space a while back, I had the photos along the walls, and someone asked me, "How would you feel though if someone walks in and they go, 'Oh my gosh, it's my grandma'?" I said,
"Great,
that'd be amazing.
Great.
Then they should take the photo.
Hallelujah. Yes. Yeah.
But I felt how you felt, where it was. I could see, especially with film, they were clearly using it for really important moments in their lives. Their baby being born, or people just got married, or their first house. And it was very moving to see these beautiful moments. But also, I wish there was some way that it could have remained connected to their families. I don't know how these photos
how did they get thrown away? But I've seen it happen in my own generation where of friends, their parents passed away, and they would find, "Oh, I found a shoebox full of photos. I don't know who these people are," and out in the garbage they go. I said, aren't you curious? Don't you lay them out on a dining room table and say, "I wonder if this was, Uncle whoever or Auntie whoever. Who are these kids? Are they still alive?" Or, curiosity. And I think lack of curiosity, is killing us in a lot of ways. Don't lose that history. Preserve it.
Stay curious.
Yeah, stay curious.
Well, thank you for satisfying my curiosity today. I was so excited to get to ask you questions about your life, about your knowledge of cameras. Mm-hmm. And I have a feeling that even once I sit down with this video, I'm going to have so many more. I'm sure other people will too. And so what's actually the best way to reach you if anybody watches this and then wants to get in touch? Well,
the easiest way, I'm going to tell you something funny. I'm such a Luddite at times. People will try to call me or text me, and they'll say, why haven't you, where? Oh, well, I'm so old school that most of the time I leave my cell phone on my desk and I pretend it's a landline. So I often leave the house without it. But the best way is always by email. And my email is very simple. It's my last name, Silver, SILVER, at well.com. WELL.com. Silver at welcome.
Great. There you have it.
The best way to reach me.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was wonderful.